Welcome to the Limitless Ladies in Leadership podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I've created a space for the many powerful, creative, and limitless female leaders to share their stories. From female CEOs to professional athletes and doctors, every powerful woman has a story to tell. There's no guarantee where this podcast will take us, so welcome to the unfiltered, unedited, and badass space for all women to align. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to show some love on Patreon at Limitless Ladies in Leadership. But for now, welcome to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and we have another fun episode coming up. Before we get to the interview, I'd like to thank my Patreons for keeping this podcast going. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon, please follow the podcast at Limitless Ladies in Leadership or click the link in the description of the podcast. Today, I will be speaking with Nicole Hopkins. Nicole is on her way to finishing her 500-hour registered yoga teacher training. She has taught yoga for several years, but took a small break during COVID. In the meantime, she has used this break to study and practice and use these tools towards a deeper sense of self-awareness, self-love, and self-acceptance. Nicole, I can't wait to dive into your story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So before we get started in this interview, I like to ask my guests what the word limitless means to them. So what does it mean to you?
Limitless to me means that no boundaries, nothing holding you back and going for it, full out force.
Do you feel like that's the kind of life that you're living right now?
Yes. I get to live limitless life.
I'm so excited to dive into your story. So we'll just start from the beginning. I understand that you are one of 4 girls in your family. Wow. I only have a brother, so I have no idea what that's like to have sisters. And you were also the youngest. I'm the oldest. So what was that like being the youngest of 4 girls?
Very interesting being raised with 4 girls. Ultimately, I think a lot that you would think that it would be a very feminine household and a girly household. That is not the experience that I had growing up in the house of girls. It was very much more, we didn't talk about sexual things. We didn't talk about body. We didn't talk about any of the feminine sides of being a woman, which is very interesting looking back now, realizing to have that many girls in a home and that wasn't the atmosphere that it was in.
So I actually want to ask you about that because I had a similar experience growing up where it was kind of just like the whole sexual topic or like, periods or, bodies changing, whatever. That wasn't something that was talked about in my family either. So how were you taught these things? Was it just kind of like, hey, you're a teenager, welcome to, puberty? Or like, how did that come about for you?
Yeah, I didn't even talk about it at all to my mom. I kept it a secret, like whenever I got my period and knew that like, hey, I know enough knowledge from just overhearing things that I think I know what you're supposed to do. And so I just went with that with no guidance, nobody telling me that this is how it works. I would just go in and go, okay, I've got the stuff I need. So we're good from here. And I remember one day my mom was like, hey, my sister was a little bit older than me. One of my sisters is 14 months older than me. And she's like, your sister, got her period. So you should be getting yours sometime soon. I was like, oh yeah, I already got that like a year ago.
Wow.
And she was like, what? And then that was the end of that conversation.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. I remember when I was like kind of close to that age, my mom just kind of threw some books in my room that were like written in 1940 and they were like basically the stages of like puberty into womanhood. And it was kind of scary because I just remember thinking like, okay, I know what's happening to me is quote unquote normal, but like also there's a lot of crazy emotions and stuff that go along with that I don't really know how to handle right now. Was that something that was difficult for you?
I don't remember the emotional side of it, seeing those ups and downs with that state. I just don't remember that being part of it. I think a lot of it was just not being able to feel comfortable or safe enough to talk about it. and not having that environment for it.
Yeah. So this kind of segues into the next part. So I know you moved away from your home. How old were you when you moved?
When I moved out of the state, or moved away from, like, moved just to my own place?
Moved from mom.
Moved from mom. Oh, yeah. I was 18 when I first moved out. Me and my sister that's 14 months older than I, we got an apartment together and lived together for a little while.
What was your motivation in leaving so young?
Honestly, my parents got divorced when I was about 13 years old, and my mom had a new boyfriend, and we moved in with him. And the relationship with my mom and her boyfriend, like how I felt that she was, my experience of her was that she was clingy to him, that she needed him. It just wasn't a healthy relationship. And I just remember going, man, I don't want to create a story that this is the way that marriage and relationships are, and I can't be around it anymore. So I need to separate myself from it before this becomes my reality.
That's a really mature statement. I left at 17, and I had some similar thoughts about my parents. My parents got divorced when I was 13, 14, so similar time. And I don't think I had that much clarity at that time. I think my thought was like, screw this, I'm out, So fast forwarding a little bit, I have had the pleasure to meet your now husband, or only husband, John, via Zoom anyway, not in person. But you guys met when you were pretty young, right? How old were you?
I was 20 when we met.
Okay. And then you got married shortly after, correct?
I did.
So I know John has played such a huge support system in your life. And when I'm thinking about your story, I'm like, man, from what I know, like, you could have ended up with somebody so much worse, coming from the background you came from, just having this urge to get out. Like, you could have ended up with someone that didn't respect you, that didn't take care of you. And I feel like, just from my own perspective, that you ended up with a really amazing person.
Yes, no, I definitely won the lottery with my husband. He is amazing, and he teaches me so much. It's like he's the mirror of all the things that I inspire and know of my greatness to be. And so he allows me to see that, and he gives me the possibility to, like, expand my mindset around things when I'm like, that's not possible. Like, how could you do that? That's like, and I put limits, right? And he's like, no, there are no limits. You just go for it. And he shows me that all the time, and just the way that he is, like, he's not afraid to go for it.
That's so cool.
And yeah, it just breaks down those boundaries I've put on myself. So it's amazing.
And it's great because I've only known you for a short amount of time. And so I don't have much experience in seeing you with boundaries or with limits. Like, I just see this amazing package that you are today. And so it's kind of cool to hear this part of your story.
Mm.
So I want to back up a little bit to your childhood. You had mentioned to me before the podcast that you started telling yourself a certain story about life, something around 4 years old that you created in your mind. What was this story that you were talking about?
So I remember at being 4 years old and being in preschool, there was this little boy who would chase me around all the time. Every day it was a thing. And I would go and I would hide underneath the table, and he would come and find me underneath the table, and he would just kiss me non-stop. And I remember telling my mom about it because I was so embarrassed. I did not like it. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to be chased by this boy. I was tired of trying to hide from him. Mm-hmm. And my mom just laughed and thought it was cute. Mm. And I just remember at that time, like, wanting to scream so bad that it's not cute. Like, I'm asking you to help me in this, and I don't know how to get through it without you. And my voice all of a sudden seemed like it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even when you're telling me this story, even though I understand you were 4, I bet the boy was close to your age too. And it's like, sure, we can look at a little child and be like, oh, look how cute they are. But I felt, as you were saying that, like, I'm putting myself in your position, and I'm like, ooh, cringe, like, I wouldn't want to feel, and I've felt this way before. I do not like feeling like I don't have the power to have my own boundary or have, be able to have a voice, like you were saying. So as you got this feedback from your mom and moving into later childhood, was this something that you were struggling with putting up a boundary, with having like a certain voice towards things that you felt didn't fit in your boundary?
Yeah, I definitely did. And so I began to, at an early age, just thinking my voice didn't matter. And being also, I know I talked earlier, in a house with 4 girls and being the youngest. And, that's a lot of voices being spoken a lot of times. And so it's like just easy just to continue to write that story then, like, hey, my voice doesn't matter. I'm the youngest one. Nobody has time to listen to me. Or I'm going to say something that's not important, doesn't matter. And just writing that story that my voice doesn't matter. What I have to say doesn't matter. Nobody wants to listen to me. And so just really then going inward instead of finding a safe space to speak from.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to get into this a little bit more on how this is transformed in your life. But one thing I did want to ask you was, okay, let's talk about the word shy, because I think we all have like a personal definition of that. And then there's the dictionary definition. But for me, like my definition has changed. And you had mentioned to me before the podcast that yours has as well. So what do you think that the word shy meant to you before? And like, how does that appear in your life today? How has it changed?
Yeah. So definitely grew up with thinking that shy was just like a thing that you were, like somebody was just shy, and that just meant that they were quiet. They just didn't talk. What I really came to realize is that that is not what shy is. And, or my belief of the word shy, that shy is a cover up for something else that's really underlying underneath that then comes across as what we label as shy. And, mine was stemmed from my voice doesn't matter, having anxiety around things. And so got away with it because my whole life I'm just shy. And so I just continue to run that story, and that continues to run my life. And I continue to get by with it because I'm just this shy girl.
Yeah. Do you think that turned into, I mean, you did kind of mention this, that it almost kind of turned into an excuse, that it was an easy thing to fall back to? That's what it sounds like, is like, oh, I'm just the shy one. Like, it's an easy way to get out of a situation that may be uncomfortable for you. So when did this change for you? Like, when did you decide that this wasn't working for you anymore?
Honestly, I ran that for a long time. I mean, even I think my husband was completely surprised because he doesn't live life shy, quote unquote shy, right? I mean, like, that's not even a thing to him. So he didn't even pick up on the fact that I was quiet, or like what was really going on. And he would always be like, Nicole, why don't you like talk and speak up? And I would just literally, when people would come over to our house that I didn't know, I would go hide in our closet and I would cry because I had to talk to people. And I think that was really like the first time that I'm like, okay, there's got to be something else, because this just isn't like shy, but shy is making me cry in a closet. I had done some work and really found out, I'm like, man, I am playing the back seat. I am back here hiding and not using my voice because I have used the excuse my whole life that I'm shy. And it's time to break that barrier down and show up for life, because shy doesn't get you, doesn't get me where I want to be in this life. It keeps me just hiding. Like, shy is hiding, and I can't change and shake the world and progress people forward if I'm just playing quiet.
Yeah. So in your opinion and in your experience, do you think that being shy or reserved is a choice?
Now, yes. Then no, because I was caught up in it and it was my story, and it was like, that's who I am. I am shy. That's me. I'm the quiet girl. No.
It's really funny because I have a pretty big personality and I have a loud voice. And so people have this like assumption in their head that I'm just like super confident and super outgoing and all this. But I remember like when I first came to San Diego and started changing my life around, one of my early jobs was as a server at a restaurant. And I remember like the first couple tables I would go to, I had the tray in my hand and I'm like shaking because I'm like, I have to go up to these complete strangers and say hi. And this was a situation that was expected. Like when you go to a restaurant, you expect a server to come up to you and talk to you. And even so, I was like, I don't know. And it's really funny because that was maybe 7 years ago. And when I tell people that story that only know me today, they're like, what? Like, you don't seem like you're shy. I'm like, there's just I'm uncomfortable sometimes, you know?
Yeah, and I love that you shared that because like too, it's like practicing the skill. So if shy has been or not knowing, like not communicating and not knowing how to communicate with people has been a practice the whole life, then how do we get out of that? We get to practice something different. And so like you said, like start talking, right? And the first time that you do it might be really uncomfortable. And then you keep doing it, you keep showing up every single time going, I'm going to have the conversation until you get to rewrite a new story and just practice it where it's like, not a big deal. I've done this 1,000 times because shy, I can do.
Yeah.
I've done it 1,000 times. Right. But, so it's just practicing that new pathway.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we both kind of have that experience there. Now, I know for you that writing and poetry has been a huge outlet for you, and this is really exciting for me. When did you really start putting some thoughts on paper? When do you remember doing that?
Oh, I can remember being 8, 9 years old, writing in my room.
Do you remember anything that you wrote back then?
I still have the notebooks. In fact, I pulled some out not too long ago. I was like, I just want to go back and read these. And I was like, maybe I didn't want to go back and read those. It's so funny to like go back to that 13-year-old's mind and really see what was going on at that time. But it's also really cool little gift to treasure and have.
That's really cool. Now, I know you still write today. So how is that transformed? And like, what do you like writing about today?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess then all my past stuff, of course, as a teenage girl, it's about love, right? Like love and relationships and this guy and this boy. So obviously now I have one treasure. Well, I actually have 3. I have 2 little boys. So they're included into my men in my life that I adore and treasure. But my poetry pieces too have transformed into like the inner work or different things that I have experienced through life and like really going through the journey of the difficult part and then coming through on the other side. Like, what does this moment have to offer me? And so allowing myself to ride the waves and speak through that is where my pieces have really taken me on my journey.
Yeah, that's really cool. I haven't really ever gotten into poetry, so to speak, but writing is a big outlet for me. And it's something that I feel that I've always kind of been good at. And I, took journalism in college. And so it's something that I can really relate to on that level. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. So I don't know if you have the answer to this, but if you happen to have a short poem nearby, would you mind sharing one?
Oh, I can have one nearby, and I will actually read one that's pretty short, and it is one of my favorites. I also love how on poetry pieces, sometimes I'm writing about one thing, and then I go back and read it again, and I'm like, man, was I talking about that, or was I talking about this other situation? Because they both come together. And I just love that about writing and really seeing, man, where does that land and knowing where the piece took me. So yeah, I'd love to share.
Okay.
All right. So this one is called Hide and Go Seek.
Okay.
All right. I remember when we used to go play hide and seek. You would go hide and it was my part to find you. I remember always knowing right where you were at, but pretending I didn't. I guess this game is funny like that. Did you want me to find you? Did you like hiding alone in the dark? Tell me, how was that part? I always knew where you were hiding. I thought maybe you liked it there. Maybe opening the door to see what was inside was too much for me to bear. So I would stand there next to the door and stare. I still wonder what would have happened if I could have met you there.
How long ago was that written?
I wrote that one about 6 months ago.
Wow. I hear just based on what I know about you, that could have taken place in childhood, like literal hide and seek with your sisters, or this could have been something as an analogy later in your life. What were you thinking when you were writing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote it from a childhood story with a sister. And when I went back and reread it, I was like, wow, this actually really relates to an analogy now in life. So you pinpointed that one right on.
It's so crazy. And for those listening, this is the first time I heard this. So that's really cool to hear. Wow. Well, thank you. And when you speak, like, this is the second time I've heard a poem from you. I heard one in one of our group Zooms before. And there's the way that you change your voice and appear, and like just the energy that comes from you, like it is so strong. Like I just feel this like you transform into this character that's like owning this, there's no shy girl there, and it's amazing.
I know. And that's what's so cool is I really do. Like when I do my poetry pieces, I'm like, man, it's like coming from the depth of me, and shy literally doesn't exist in that space at all. And it's really cool because I'm like, man, I don't have to work at it. It's just like this that just is like, I'm wanting to come out. I get to come out.
Okay. So I know this is another area I relate to you. We have so many things in common. You had mentioned to me that you always kind of felt that crying was a weakness. And I remember growing up, as the older one, that I felt that I had to be the strong one for my little brother, especially when there was chaos at home. And I created this story that strong people didn't cry. Was this like a similar thing for you? Did you kind of create a similar story that if you cried, it was a weakness?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely. Being seen as what I would say was sensitive. Like I really ran that story of, oh, I'm too sensitive. I cry too much, and crying is weakness, and you can't do that. So don't cry. Don't feel any of that. Just suck it up. Suck it up.
Mm-hmm. So you just kind of learned to shut it off. It probably didn't take a whole lot to just.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what's so crazy for me is that like it was so easy from what I remember to learn to shut this stuff off. But then when you try to like when I tried to revisit this later in my life and like reopen this and be like, okay, it's okay to cry. It is like so hard. It's so hard to turn it back on.
Yeah. And like learning to own that, like it's okay. Like I get to own that it's okay to cry, and because it really, by shutting off that crying or, sensitive, I feel like I'm robbing the world of my love that I have to give. And that's not fair. And I came here to be loved. So I get to shut that door down of sensitive, and I get to cry when I want to cry and love as deep as I want to love.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because your husband gave me the same advice when I was telling him that I was kind of struggling with showing emotions. And at this point, I didn't know that this is something that he had probably had a conversation with you about. And I didn't realize that you had struggled with this in the past. And so he would tell me like that basically I was robbing people of like really getting to know me. And now I'm like, okay, he's been through this before. And it was like really awesome advice.
Oh, look at that. It's like this full little circle of like how the mirrors in each other's life get to shine another light to pass on, right?
Yeah. And how cool is that? So I really want to get into this next part of this story. Let's fast forward. We're getting into your glow up, so to speak. What happened? Like, what was this new truth you started creating about crying, and this new truth about shyness, and just all the new things of the Nicole I know today? Like, what happened?
Yeah, a wake up moment. I'm tired of pretending or playing some game of some rules that somebody told me that doesn't have to be my truth. I get to create this new and where I'm going and what I'm wanting to create, versus getting caught up in these beliefs or these things that I have thought have been true, that all of a sudden it's like, hey, hold on, let's relook at this. Like pretty much just tired of my own bullshit, to be quite honest. And like, hey, you can either keep playing shy and keep playing the back road, or you can actually step up to the plate and play. Which one are you going to choose? And so I'm choosing to play.
Heck yeah, you are. And I'm so excited to see what you have to come. Now, for me, I know that even though I've done some work and I'm aware of some of these things that can hold me back at times, I'm still human, right? And they still come up.
Oh, yeah.
So today, if say, you know, some sort of scenario happens and you kind of feel yourself resisting and you feel this like struggle to show emotions or be transparent with someone, what do you do? Like, what's the next step?
So for me, the first step is always awareness. So if I'm aware about it, now I can realize that it's something that I get to shift. Definitely believe in like things of like karma, or like something that I came here on this world to learn. And so I use each of those moments as a gift. So instead of like taking it on as something that's like negative, it's like, wow, thank you for this gift. Thank you for this relationship that now all of a sudden I can't figure out how to communicate correctly in it. Thank you. How do I get to shift, or how do I get to rearrange my part to be able to see if I can come up with something different? So it's all just like awareness. Like if I'm frustrated because, I can use this. This was an example that, you know, a friend had sent me earlier, was talking about, I was paying her for a service, and I said, how much do I owe you? And she responded. I hadn't responded back to her. And she had sent that yesterday. I didn't respond back to her because I wanted to save the message so that I didn't forget to pay her. So I just didn't respond. So it would say that it was unread. Well, she started wrapping story up. I told her it was too much. And so she resent me, hey, I could do it for this much. And I was like, hold on, I just didn't respond because of this. What, like, she's like, oh, well, you know, my self-worth and my value of this. And so she had started creating that story that maybe she wasn't worth that amount. And we really got to talk about that a little bit more into depth. But like, too, I talked to her about like, okay, awesome. We realized that now we're in this place where neither one of us talked about the financial side before. What would it look like had we had this conversation at the beginning before the service ever happened? Like, hey, yes, I'll definitely do this for you. This is how much I charge, versus now the tail end. Hey, I don't know how much to pay you. How much do I owe you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that moment is like just a moment of awareness. Oh crap, I don't like the way it feels right now in this moment. How would it look if I showed up at the conversation at the beginning this way? And just stood my ground as far as, hey, yes, I'd love to do this. This is what my service is worth. And it's not tied to her worth, because she got caught up in, well, I don't know if I'm worthy of this. And I'm like, it's not about you. Like, it's about the service that you just happen to be providing. And if I don't see the value in the service, like watching my dog, okay, so that's the scenario that we're talking about. She's watching my dog. But like, if I don't think, well, it's worth this much money for somebody to watch my dog, then I have a choice. Am I going to take my dog with me, or am I not going to go? And neither one of those things has ever said anything about her.
Yeah.
But yet the conversation doesn't happen because somehow the value went back to the person instead of the actual thing that we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love that you
wrap that story really long.
No. It's great. I love that you explained all of it, because I'm following along and I'm thinking, you know, this is something that I've definitely done in my life, where someone has come to me for like, oh, can you help me? You know, some of the areas for me, I guess, would be working out or cooking or some podcast stuff, whatever. And somebody has come to me, and then like, I never like really talked about like charging for something. And then I realized that I put, 14 hours into this and that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm really drained. It'd be cool if like someone would pay me. But then I never set that boundary in the beginning. And then it becomes this like really awkward moment later where it's like, hey, I know we didn't really talk about this, but like, I've kind of spent a lot of time with you, like, can we figure it out? So that's actually like a really good lesson for me too. That's like, okay, moving forward, if there is a certain expectation, even if money isn't going to be a thing, but say someone comes to me and says, I'm kind of struggling with losing some weight. What's some advice? Hey, look, we can have a 30-minute call and I'll just like, let's break down some of the bad habits that you have right now and transform these. Or if you'd like, I have these coaching services. I don't really, I'm just making up a scenario, but like I have these coaching services where like I charge $100 for an hour phone call or something, and then it's just kind of like everything is clear. This is the service that I have. And if you are not aligned with that, then you can either find someone else or figure it out on your own or, whatever other options you have.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, how many times are you going to have those stories where you do it for 14 hours and never have the conversation about the money? Like, how many times are you going to do that before you're like, I'm so tired of doing this. Why do I keep putting myself in the same position? And then you shift and you go, okay, now I know what I need to do. I have the conversation first.
As uncomfortable as it is less uncomfortable than trying to have that conversation later.
Yes. And they may be thinking the same thing too. They're just waiting for somebody to have the conversation. So like both are avoiding the conversation. Both are like running stories about it. But yet if somebody would just say, hey, this is it. If you find value in your body, I'll help you by offering my services. And this is what they cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I'm like laughing about it because I do this kind of stuff all the time. And it's like, oh yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about something before the podcast. You had mentioned the acronym TFAR, TFAR. So what does that stand for? It's actually the first time I've heard it.
Oh yeah. So it is standing for thoughts, feelings, actions, and results.
Okay.
So saying that your thoughts lead to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which lead to your results. And I know I'd also, kind of had put this into a little more of I can put it into more of a real life situation as far as kind of how it spoke to me whenever I was going through it. So basically the thing is if I have a thought, and let's say the thought is, I love this man. Like, wow, look at how he's holding our child in his hands, his kindness, the way he looks at our son. It's captivating. I love him. And if then this thought leads to a feeling of love, which then leads me to cry, right? Which is an action. I'm crying. And I have told and bought the belief that crying is weak, then I stop the crying. And if then I stop the crying, I stop the feeling. It's like go back a race and say, don't love, it makes you cry, and crying is weak. Therefore, love equals weak.
Ooh.
And then I'm trying to figure out like why life's not working, but yet I've set up myself for this scenario that like crying, if I love, I cry, which is what I naturally do. And if that's weak, then now love is weak.
Damn, that hit me so hard because I have never analyzed that about myself in that way. And like, it just kind of connects back to like when John was saying, like, what am I robbing people of myself when I'm not letting those walls down and being emotional when it's, obviously appropriate. And then I start thinking about like the people that I've pushed out in my life because I haven't been that transparent, or I haven't felt that I was able to let my walls down because of this belief that I've created in my head. That's totally subconscious, by the way. But wow, like I feel like I just had this like aha moment right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Sharing that too, from your side of it. And definitely too, even that the subconscious, right? How much it runs and don't even realize that it's running the show. So that's why even earlier, like awareness, we get to become aware, and from there we can move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, like you said, that's kind of the first step of anything, because if we're not aware of it, how do we move differently?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. Okay. So I want to talk about what's next. I know you've been attending some online personal growth courses, which ironically is how we met. And we are creating the new version of Nicole. I'm so excited to see what you have coming. What's something that you are committed to creating from this point forward? And I don't mean like financially or job or whatever, just in Nicole. Like, what does that look like? What are you committed to?
Oh, I am committed to continuing to use my voice as a place to continue to empower others to realize that they get to use their voice too.
Ooh, how powerful is that? Because it's great when you get to use your own voice. That's amazing. But like when other people get to learn to do that too, and there's this ripple effect and you don't know how many other people they're teaching, like, yay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I'm so happy to be a part of your journey.
Thanks for having me a part of your journey.
Of course. So on to the partially business, obviously something you love as well. But we mentioned earlier that you will have completed your 500-hour yoga teacher training by March of 2021. We're about there right now. So you must be pretty close to finishing.
Yes, I am. In fact, I uploaded my third of my 4 videos today. Super exciting. So one more video to record and upload, and then wait on the certificate.
Yay.
So that's very, very, very exciting. I'm so thankful for that education and continual learning.
Yeah. So what are you doing with the education? I know at one point you had a studio and, you know, COVID may have put a damper on some of that. So moving forward, what does that look like to you?
Yes. So moving forward, I am in the works of going to start a online program for yoga. Super, super excited about that. So that will be coming hopefully to launch at the end of April of this year. And then also in the meantime, starting to do a writing club on Zoom on Tuesday nights. Then that will begin April the 6th.
Perfect. This is so exciting. So for the writing club, what does that mean? Like people get to come on and is there like a topic or something, a prompt, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it'll be completely a forum of, it's not like a writing group where you come and it's critiquing your work. It's free expression to be able to write. So we'll start with a little meditation. I'll give a writing prompt. It may be a little short story or a little poem or just a sentence. And then whoever's in the Zoom will continue to then write from that space. So take about 15, 20 minutes to write your own piece. And then after the writing, option to share. And any and all feedback given will be from what others experience of the piece that they loved.
Ooh.
So yeah.
That is so exciting.
Yes. Super, super excited to, like I said, owning and using your voice. And so even if it's like, man, it may be for somebody just to get on there and write 2 lines and to actually speak the lines in front of others, may be a huge moment just to start practicing, like that new skill that we talked about being shy, right? And so it's like, man, I'm one of those shy people. Well, maybe you want to come to the writing group and you want to just go, you know what, I'm going to say 2 sentences. And those 2 sentences may be the first start of getting out of the story of shy and rewriting the new pattern to realize that you do have a voice and you can own it and you can show up and you can speak it. And maybe the next week it's 3 and then 4 and then 5. And that's what I'm excited to see and watch create.
This is seriously like such a cool idea because there's a certain level of also comfortability for me when I think about like an online Zoom versus doing something in person. You're kind of in your comfort of your own home and, it might not be as scary, especially being in front of people you don't necessarily know. But also I really like the option of feedback because we all kind of see ourselves differently than the way the rest of the world can perceive us at times. And hearing that kind of feedback, sometimes like for me, it's so reassuring. It's like, I have these like little thoughts in my head at times that are like, oh, you're not good at this. You're not good at that. You're this, all these negative thoughts. And then somebody from the outside that doesn't see that, and they say, well, no, I see you as being powerful. I see you as doing this. I see you as doing that. And it's like, oh, okay. So maybe there's something there, maybe I'm just getting in my own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's even like, too, we have a negative mind and a positive mind, and then we have a neutral mind. And we tend to kind of, as humans, kind of play, negative, positive, negative, positive. And sometimes we can tend to kind of go into that, to the negative side and not see the positive, or like meeting yourself with grace, like really realizing all the things that you have accomplished instead of looking at the list of all the things that hasn't been accomplished. I know that's the way I operate, right? What do I have left to do? What do I still need to do versus like, okay, take a moment and reflect at what you have done. That doesn't happen. We're not taught that. We're just taught about like, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. And we continue to drive for what's next, never being thankful or grateful or in grace and gratitude for what we've already done. It's just like, check it off, next.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That really lands for me too, because I was thinking about like some of the things that have happened recently in my life, like some of the accomplishments. And I remember sharing with a group in an app about like, oh, I had this, I had that, and just kind of like being like, whatever. And people are like, holy shit, like that's freaking cool, like good. And like, yeah, there is a what's next, because we should always have some sort of forward movement. But I hadn't even realized that like in this short period of time, I'd created like 3 pretty big things. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, even like the both and at the end of the day going, what did I accomplish today? And being thankful for that and going to bed in this space of gratitude, in the space of knowing what you did. And then the next morning, so recognizing all the things that you've accomplished and then going, okay, what does today have in store? And then once again, repeating that so that then you're not falling into this defeat, constantly trying to continue to fight through life. And, it doesn't have to be this uphill battle with shackles around our ankles and our hands trying to climb up a mountain. So just learning that and understanding that has been huge for me. The word grace is huge for me, of like, man, I get to meet myself with grace. I don't have to work out and run through a brick wall every day.
Yeah. I'm learning this myself too. And I'm like, oh yeah, we don't have to do this, right? Like this, I created this mess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Nicole, we are getting pretty close to the end of our interview today, but before we go, do you have any information, like if people are interested in joining your writing club? I don't know if you're hosting any of the online yoga stuff yet. If you are, how can people find out more information? All the things.
Yeah. So if you follow me on Instagram at NicoleHopkins.tv, I will keep all of that information updated on there with links for that. Also on Facebook, it's NicoleHopkins.tv as well there. And you can log onto my website. It's still under works, but there is a website, NicoleHopkins.tv. If you sign up for the email, whenever you log on there, it will prompt me with your email, and that way I can send out the information as well if you prefer that route. That is an option. And then also my spoken word poetry pieces, I post every Friday on YouTube. And once again, Nicole Hopkins TV is where you'll find those at.
Perfect. And I will list all of those in the description of the podcast as well. So people who may be driving or can't click on links this moment, they can do that at their own pleasure. Before we wrap up today's episode, was there anything else you wanted to mention or leave our guests with?
I do. 2 things. And one, it's been on my heart since we've been talking, to circle back to the beginning for just a moment. When we talked about women and with the part of having our periods and like starting this and like how much we enter into shame in that. And recently when I was going through this last yoga training and we were talking about that, it was a huge awakening moment to me about how our society, we don't recognize it as what a gift it is. Like that part of a woman's life is an awakening. It's her body being prepared to carry another child. Like it's like this huge moment, but we don't treat it that way. It's like shame, or like, so scared you're going to get your period while you're at school, and how embarrassing would that be? But instead of it being like what it actually is, like, wow, this body does this, and this is this awakening for this time, for this girl to become a woman. And so I just really wanted to preface that here, because it was really on my heart and was a huge awakening moment for me, because I was like, wow, yeah, that is a gift.
Let's redefine that. Like, if you really think about what a period is, like you said, we're literally able to create another life from that point forward. That is freaking amazing. So instead of having all this shame and embarrassment and, whatever, especially as a teenager in school, it's like, holy crap, we should be celebrating. Look at where I am right now. And when I'm ready and the time is right, I can create more humans. Like, this is crazy. I love that. I love it.
Yeah. And the next thing I'm going to leave you with is that every human on this earth gets to find their voice. They get to know their worth. They get to understand their worth, and they don't get to back down from who they are. This life is a journey. It's going to teach us many, many things throughout it all. And using that awareness just to continue to be what you were created here to be, which is love, kindness, compassion, and keep showing up that way.
That's amazing.
I'm supporting you all along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're all here for you too. I'm so excited to see what you create, and I'm so happy to be a part of your journey right now. And I mean, there's so many big things I think for everybody coming up. So I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I love your podcast. So
thank you.
And an honor to be on here with you.
Thank you. And you're one of my early guests on this one, at least. But for everyone else that's listening, to find out more about Nicole, visit her website at NicoleHopkins.tv, Instagram and Facebook, NicoleHopkins.tv. Super easy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of the links will be in the description of this podcast, so be sure to check that out. Once again, Nicole, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being here. And for everybody,
thanks for having me, Dana.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody else that's listening, be sure to check out Nicole by clicking those links in the description. Don't forget to check out Limitless Ladies in Leadership Patreon page to keep the podcast going and have more amazing guests just like Nicole. And thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.